Well, after Donald Trump's US aid freeze, the World Food Programme says it's halving its rations for refugee camps in Bangladesh. The UN's refugee agency fears that move could force Rohingya refugees to go elsewhere and even embark on dangerous journeys by sea. Max Walden is a journalist with the ABC's Asia Pacific Newsroom, and he joins me now from Melbourne. Max, good to have you with us this evening. Firstly, Max, what are the conditions like for Rohingya refugees in those camps at present, and what would the halving of rations mean for them?
Yeah, well, Girish, conditions in those camps have been terrible for years. People there are subject to overcrowding. They're subject to cyclones, fires, flooding, and all the disease that comes along with infectious diseases that's exacerbated by the monsoon season that hits that part of the world very hard. According to UNICEF, some more than 4 in 10 children there are already subject to chronic malnutrition. So life there was already really dangerous and desperate, and it looks like it's about to get much worse.
Yes, and would this sort of raise calls for Australia or other countries to step in and fill whatever shortfalls might come?
Yeah, definitely. So it's been noted that the US to date has more or less provided around half of all of the aid for the humanitarian effort for Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. Of course, Australia is an important regional player. DFAT told me that since 2017, they'd provided $540 million to Bangladesh for that particular aid effort. Nevertheless, I think that there is calls from advocate groups, including the Australian Council for International Development. They told me that the aid cuts would be beyond devastating for people in those camps. And they said that Australia should be looking, along with like-minded donors, in the face of these cuts, which, of course, don't only affect refugees in Bangladesh, but, of course, all sorts of aid efforts across the Asia-Pacific in stepping in to fill some of that gap. And that's a call that I've heard from certainly other humanitarian organizations as well.
Yes, and could this aid cut really make it worse for the Rohingyas in terms of the violence they face when they live in Bangladesh?
Yeah, definitely. So that's what aid agencies are warning about. I think already, these camps were plagued by crime and violence, which has sort of gotten worse in recent years. Save the Children says, that kids there live in constant fear. Many are afraid to leave their homes. And the World Food Programme, in sort of making its appeal for this funding that it requires in order to not have to make these cuts, said that the likelihood of particularly girls and women being subject to greater risk of exploitation, trafficking, and family violence was very real.
And Max, is there a risk that the worsening conditions that you are just talking about could increase the likelihood of Rohingya refugees being forced to leave those camps and embark on possibly even dangerous journeys by sea?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the UN Refugee Agency has been warning about. I mean, in recent years, we've seen a pretty steady flow of people, given the existing desperation in those camps, taking dangerous boat journeys. I think more than 650 people died on the oceans last year trying to escape. And indeed, yeah, I think as well it's worth noting that because the US has now frozen its refugee resettlement program, there's even less hope for Rohingya refugees to reach a safe third country, I guess, without the help of people smugglers or jumping on a dangerous boat. So many of these boats end up in particularly Indonesia's Aceh province, but there they've seen increasing hostility in recent years. So it's a place that, it's very poor. Indonesia as a nation has not signed the Refugee Convention. So certainly, the risk of, I guess, a growing regional crisis right on Australia's doorstep, again, is quite real.
Okay, Max Walden, thanks very much for shedding more light on what's appearing like a looming worsening crisis there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Girish.